Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Ahsoka Episode 8. The finale is here, and throughout this video we're going to be going over the Easter eggs, hidden details, and things you might have missed in it. We'll also be discussing our thoughts on the series and going over where we think things will be going for the future of Filoni's films. For one final time, I'm going to need you to hit that thumbs up button and also make sure you subscribe, as we've got big breakdowns on Loki Season 2 and Gen V every week. Without the way, a huge thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Ahsoka Episode 8.
War is inevitable. One must destroy in order to create.
Now last week saw Thrawn taking a sort of defeat on Peridea after Ahsoka showed up to save Sabine and Ezra. Was a bit of a cope though, because man said he actually wanted to lose because now they had enough time to fill up his ship, the Chimera. Clearly he's been set on returning to the main universe, which does come to pass during this entry. He also seemed pretty worried about Anakin, who we'll talk about more later on in the video. Baylan ended up bailing on Shin, and the two parted ways with her getting an offer she could refuse. I know the episode did get a bit of hate online, but they kinda needed to set things up for this one so we can get into what's a big loss on the horizon for the New Republic. Anyway, that should be fully caught up, and we begin by looking at the back end of the Chimera. I love how you get a lot of focus on its engines, and you can see that the two main ones are destroyed. This is why they basically need the big hyperspace ring, and this episode sort of does a reverse Uno card and ends up with Ezra and Thrawn returning to the main universe, while Sabine and Ahsoka get left behind. This showing the back kind of hints to us seeing the back of it, but I think we might be reaching there, but I thought it was just a nice bit of imagery to start the episode with. Either way, the Chimera has been a big thing in the Legends continuity, and that had it appearing during the Battle of Endor. However, this was then retconned, and it was all reverted back when Disney took over. That had it being taken out during Rebels, which ended with us getting a time jump taking things post-battle. I've also seen people asking what painting is on the bottom, and this itself is its namesake, the Chimera. It's appeared in a number of art involving the character, and it's something you saw when he was part of the Chiss Academy. A Chimera is a monster made up of many parts, and the ship's sort of echoing that now due to its repairs. Now Thrawn decides to dispatch two TIE fighters to take out the hero, and he talks about not overestimating the Jedi. He references his loss to Ezra, and talks about how he fell victim to the actions of a single Jedi.
Even I fell victim to the heroics of a single Jedi.
Wasn't really single if Sabine's going across the galaxy for him, but we also get it further confirmed about how Morgan discovered Thrawn. It was Morgan who detected the Night Sisters across the galaxy, and in return as a thank you they give her the gift of shadows. This is very much like a nunnery in which she has to sacrifice her life and desires and everything she wants to become a part of them. It's sort of like how the Jedi operate too, with her having to give up all her possessions in order to become part of this higher power. Infusing her with Night Sister magic, Morgan's eyes turn black, and we see as the tattoo-like markings are added to her face. They then bring forth the Blade of Talzin, which is a reference to Dathomir's mother Talzin. This is probably the weapon she used before she died, but either way, it's an extremely powerful sword. Now the Great Mothers could really become a big threat in the main universe, and though the Night Sisters have appeared throughout the saga, we've not seen them at this level. Normally they're separate from the Imperials, and though characters like Ventress became an Inquisitor, they're sort of off doing their own thing. They're clearly based on the witches of Macbeth and mythological archetypes, with them helping to heralding great power changes. Episode 2 was called Toil and Trouble, which is a quote from the three witches that appeared in Macbeth. As we know, this involved a man who became an almost unstoppable king, which could be riffing on where they're taking things with Thrawn. The witches themselves are also named after the Sisters of Fate, with them sharing almost identical names to the three from the Legends. They too aided Zeus and the gods, and in both cases they were eventually toppled. They've talked about the threads of fate and destiny, and are likely going to follow a similar arc to what they do in the myths. These sisters were later adapted into the Norns, which pull directly from Norse mythology. Baylan's skull and Shin Hati are named after the Norse wolves, and thus are tying all these legends together. I think that they'll aid Thrawn in the main universe and help him take over things for a while, but as we know, the sequel trilogy is coming. I don't know if it's better to take some of the conflict back to the Peridian side, and then at least it's not reliant on wrapping up by the time somehow Palpatine returned. Either way, their dogma mystical magics could change the cosmos, and they have the ability to reanimate the dead and communicate across great distances. Now after they bestow their powers, we cut to the title and get a further reference to the Chronicles of Narnia. This episode is called The Jedi, the Witch and the Warlord, which is a nod to the title, The Lion, the Witch in the Wardrobe. Filoni's taken inspiration from this before too, with the world between worlds being a reference to the wood between worlds. Now at this point we cut to the T6 and a caravan of Noddy, and in case you missed our last video, Tom on the mic pointed out they resemble the Chelidae from Star Wars Resistance. Senator Giorno also appears in that too, so it looks like they're pulling lots of elements from that in. Also, I know people suspect Giorno is an Imperial remnant, but he actually shows up as an older man in Resistance, with his son being the main character of that spin-off show. Makes you wonder if somehow it's all connected. But don't worry your little head about it, mate, because you're gonna look great.
How, Paul? How do I do that?
Well, you just go below the video and pick up one of our Ahsoka-inspired t-shirts. We've got ones if you want to get naughty like the naughty, and also an Ahsoka and Grogu one quoting their very first meeting. All the tees help support the channel and get videos like this made, so if you've enjoyed our coverage, then please check them out. Now speaking of decking yourself out, we see Ezra creating a lightsaber. Sort of reminds me of the deleted scene from Return of the Jedi in which we watched Luke building his green one just before Jabba's. However, moments like this have happened across the saga, and we see as Huyang oversees the creation of it. Huyang is thousands of years old, and he's a character that's helped to make lightsabers for countless numbers of Jedi. This is why man's getting so involved with it, and he gets pretty annoyed with that Ezra's just rushing through it. Now Ezra's fighting style got a lot of crap last week, but I think there was actually a reason for it. The fact the Night Sisters don't use kyber crystals shows there's not really any in this galaxy, and Ezra had to wait for Huyang to bring some so that he could create this weapon. Ezra also hadn't used a lightsaber for about 10 years, and thus he probably felt like he'd be a little rusty. I used to play the drums, mate, yeah, I used to play the bloody drums, and I'd hit that kick like it was the fucking like button. Now, I haven't played it for about 15 years, and I went to do it the other week, and I was fucking shit, so I can see why he's done what he's done. Anyway, Force karate and the Force being his ally is something that Yoda actually said himself. Martial arts and things like Terrace Cassie are key fighting elements in Star Wars, with them being a major factor when Lucas was crafting out the universe. The Jedi themselves are based on samurai, and the lightsaber duels also aped katana fighting. Jedi were also never meant to go on the attack and only ever act in self-defense. This is the key to several self-defense arts, with it being an Eastern philosophy when it comes to combat. The Sith, on the other hand, they're meant to strike in anger, which, yeah, kind of ties it all together, and I'm glad we're kind of going back to karate. I like it, but I know you guys don't. So yeah, I was expecting him to build one, and saving it for the finale will hopefully win round the naysayers, but we'll see. I'm not sure how this episode's been received, and yeah, there are high and low points, so I think there probably will be mixed feelings on it. But either way, they discuss Kanan, and Huyang refers to him as Caleb, which was his original name when he was part of the Jedi Order. We actually saw him escaping during the start of Bad Batch Episode 1, which happened during the events of Order 66. Huyang talks about the relationship between master and apprentice, and this is something we further see with Sabine and Ahsoka later on. The fact Sabine stays behind shows it wasn't just about saving Ezra, and thus it kind of brings things full circle from here. Now this closeness to Kanan's reflected in Ezra's lightsaber too, with him getting the same emitter that his master once had. There were only two, and with him getting this, it kind of reminded me of Harry's wand being attached to Voldemort, the guy whose name we don't say. Now Ezra sparks it up, and we see that it's a blue lightsaber after having a green one at first, which now belongs to Sabine. This is kind of like the opposite to Luke, who goes from blue to green in the original trilogy. Sabine ends up going off, realizing she's kind of let everyone down, and we learn why Ahsoka left her in the first place. Ahsoka was afraid of the fear growing in Sabine, fear she's been holding on to since the destruction of Mandalore. MT was talking about this with me, and he kinda related it to being like her own master Anakin Skywalker. She was afraid of Sabine's fear being a path to the dark side for her, so we can see why Ahsoka was so hesitant in training her. Outside we catch her meditating on the roof, and she says Anakin always stood by her even when no one else did.
He always stood by me, even when no one else did.
This is most likely talking about when she was on trial by the Jedi, and he was the one that believed in her. MT also pointed out Ahsoka's face cringes when Sabine says that she tries. This happens just before Sabine corrects herself and says that she does, which is a clear indicator of what Yoda taught Ahsoka. Ahsoka then says being a Jedi is not about wielding a lightsaber, as she's trying to teach her that it's not just about killing people. It reminds me of when Yoda said, wars not make one great, or great ones make not war, or whatever the lesson was, but it was very important. Also, you might hear I've got got the sniffles this morning, guys, so apologies for how I sound crappier than usual, but we're going to keep moving. Now, being a Jedi is, of course, about training your mind in order to conquer one's fears, and training the body in order to be able to protect life. In the world between worlds, Ahsoka argued about being a soldier, and this clearly reflects the lessons that she learned in the domain. Anyway, the moment of peace is broken up by the TIE fighters, and you can actually see the pilot's helmet have a crack in them. We later get it confirmed, something we've been talking about for weeks, which is that these troopers had elements of necromancy in them. And the fact that the pilot's helmet is cracked kind of implies they've been in what's likely a fatal crash before. Pilots don't tend to get dents in their armor because TIE shields are weak and pilots rarely survive their destruction. Unless you're Kylo Ren in Rise of Skywalker, and then you can just walk away from one of the worst crashes ever. Now later on, Thrawn tells Enoch to mark the captain for a citation, but obviously the guy's dead, so this would have to happen when he comes back to life. It's a great bit of foreshadowing for the undead reveal, and yeah, it kinda teases what's going on with them. Also, I love the bit where Sabine rushes to the cockpit and we can see her bump into Hu Yang. His expression's hilarious, and yeah, just a nice little detail that adds a bit of comedy to the scene. Either way, they stop them, but it messes up the ship, and thus, yeah, this is going to slow them down. Cut across to Thrawn, which is when Enoch brings in the news, and I think the way his back's turned here could be foreshadowing stuff down the line. Thrawn clearly completely trusts him, which is why he has his back turned to him, which could become a weakness. In the legends, he was killed by his bodyguard Rook, who stabbed him in the back because he didn't watch it. Now, Rook featured in Rebels, and he ended up dying, so that rules them out going in that direction. I think he died anyway. Yeah, characters can always somehow return, but I think that's him out of it, which is why Thrawn's now with Enoch. Now, I doubt Enoch's going to follow the same route, and I think he's more likely conjured through Night Sister magic. Both he and the Stormtrooper outfit actually seem like they're in line with the Roman 9th Legion, who disappeared during 108 AD. Now, no one really knows what happened to them, and there's always been an air of mystery like what's with the troopers here. I've talked about before what I think's going on with them, and I believe they're loosely adapting those from the Night Trooper arc. In the Clone Wars and Fallen Order, the Night Sisters have brought the dead back to life, and it's a quick way to provide Thrawn with his own legion. Clones are out at this point, and we've seen with the Stormtroopers that they aren't as reliable as their former forces. Lots of Imperial Stormtroopers defected, and with the clones, most of them stuck to their orders. This even happened when it came to betraying their friends, the Jedi, showing how easy they were to manipulate as a whole. I think it's a similar situation here, and these mysterious warriors bring a much cooler side of the Stormtroopers that we haven't really seen before. Now, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra end up riding out on the Howlers, with them being akin to the Loth Wolves Ezra grew kinship with. We see Stormtroopers willing to sacrifice themselves and stay behind on the planet, which I took that convo as rather than being waiting on the planet than them sacrificing their lives. The hyperspace ring starts to wrap around the Star Destroyer, and it does start to make sense that it had to be this size. As we saw in the opening shot, the engines are busted up, so it would need something like this in order to return home. During this, we also learn that Thrawn woke up the Great Mothers after he found their temple, and their resurrection magic helped him build his starship. Thrawn then says there'll be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, and much like Baylan, all Thrawn can see within Ahsoka is Anakin's cutting reckless capacity for destruction. The left side of Thrawn's shirt also appears to have some type of blemish on it, or almost like there was a blaster hole there that was later sewed up. MT was wondering if he got shot and then was resurrected by the Night Sisters later down the line, which I think would be a pretty inventive way to take things. Either way, he rains down hellfire on the Howlers, with Sabine, Ezra, and Ahsoka all using their powers to open the gate. I felt like Sabine might doubt herself in this moment, but it shows she's starting to believe she can use the Force. I also love the disgust on Thrawn's face as well, and from here we cut to the gang battling the troopers. Anakin's training made it so she could defend against multiple forces, which really comes in handy when there's lots of people like this. They cut through them, but like a lot of shows and films involving necromancy, we then get a shot of them all rising up together. Here we can catch violin stabs in the score as well, which mimics the notes of Danse Macabre. This is also known as Dance of the Death music, so I love that they brought it across for this. Also, nice touch that the Night Troopers make zombie noises when resurrected, and yeah, it's such a cool little thing that really makes this scene pop. Sabine eventually also starts to trust in her lightsaber once more, and equips it after putting her blasters away. Cut to Thrawn, who's worried they're gonna make it aboard the ship, and Morgan accepts that she has to stay behind. Morgan Elsbeth says for Dathomir in response to Thrawn saying for the Empire, and this is revealing where her true allegiances lie. I was expecting her to get taken out by Shin due to the constant dirty looks, but unfortunately she doesn't and is instead killed by the heroes. Now, Morgan not being able to see the Promised Land despite all the work she's done is sort of what happens to Moses in the Bible. He was denied entry to the Promised Land by God, and Morgan's not going to be allowed to travel out to Dathomir. Getting a rematch of the fight we had back when Ahsoka was first introduced in live action, we then see as the pair duke it out with Morgan's new blade. This glows green with Night Sister energy, and it reminded me a lot of the ways magic is designed during Fallen Order. Making it to the shrine, we finally see Thrawn on the Eye of Sion, with Sion itself, of course, meaning air. Take Us Out could also be a little reference to Star Trek, but yeah, not sure if I'm reaching with that. Now with Sabine and Ezra, we can see she finally pulls her lightsaber towards her, and I love how you can see the dislodged jaw just beneath the helmet. She grabs the saber and then ignites it by his head, which is kinda similar to what happened with the Praetorian Guards in The Last Jedi. Now, Sabine using the Force is something that's also been a point of contention throughout the series too, but we've been building towards her gaining self-belief she can do it. This brings the series closer to George's original vision, as he believed that everyone could use the Force if they trained hard enough.
Everyone has the Force in them, everyone. And there's two sides to the Force. The dark side, which is selfishness, and the light side, which is compassion. So we all struggle to keep these two things in balance, and hopefully we're able to move it a little bit more toward the bright side.
So people like Anakin, they had natural talent, which explained why they could do it, well, naturally. Though if they use that guys like Han and stuff, they could tap into it subconsciously, and this explained their incredible flight abilities. Even Finn had moments where he seemed Force sensitive, so there has always been this idea carried throughout the saga. Together, the pair pull off a sort of Matrix jump to the ship, with Ezra making the leap and then Sabine pushing him. It's finally her embracing her powers, and in the end, it manages to take him across. Now, I believe this is the same kind of Force throw Ezra and Maul did together when they were featured in that second last episode of Rebels Season 2, I think it was. MT noticed that Ezra and Kanan all see to do it as well, as Ezra told Maul about it in that episode. Sabine then goes to make the jump too, however, Ahsoka arrives still fighting the troopers and Morgan. Sabine ends up staying behind with her master, and this shows it wasn't just about Ezra and that she was loyal to Ahsoka as well. Morgan cuts her handle in half and Ahsoka's left with one blade, and we get a final big action scene as the pair work together. Sabine and Ahsoka finally learn how to team up, and this is just like how my boy Huyang wanted. I'm so happy for him. Now, while Morgan's sister abandoned her, Ahsoka's sister came to her aid, and that is the difference between the dark side and light side users. There's the idea of selfishness versus selflessness, and though Sabine demonstrated the former earlier in the season, she's now embraced selflessness in order to save her friend. Now with Thrawn, there's also this need to win no matter what, and I feel the Night Sisters get angry he keeps bombarding this sacred temple. The T6 then arrives and the pair jump in it together, which is when they race up and try and catch up with Thrawn. Opening a channel, Thrawn calls Ahsoka a Ronin, furthering the influence of Japanese samurai culture onto the Star Wars series. The hyperdrive's then studded up and the T6 is blasted back in a scene that's reminiscent of the one with Hera when Morgan first made the jump. This leaves them taking a big fat L, and they return to the planet and the caravan of Noti. We get more Eye of the Owl, which we'll talk about more in just a bit, and then see Shin going out to the tribe. From here we cut to Baylan standing on the hand of the father, and just beside him we can also catch a big statue of the son. Huge shoutouts to MT for getting all this super early, and it's nice to see a through time actually being predicted right for once. Feel like unfortunately though, they had to cut down a lot of the ending here, as they may have teased stuff happening further with Baylan. I bet they don't really know what they're doing with Ray Stevenson's death yet, and thus they kinda have to keep it in line with this and just tease things for the future. Now elsewhere we see Thrawn finally reaching Dathomir, which the Night Sisters seem to be very, very pleased about. Dathomir was very much the promised land for them, and they travelled out from the Peridian Galaxy in order to get to this planet. Legions of coffins also line the hull, and elsewhere we see as Ezra's managed to escape to Hera. Finally the pair are reunited, with even little Chop Chop quelling his bloodthirst to see his new mate. Now I kinda believe that Ezra might take her son on Jason as his apprentice, and I think that Jason will be a big character going forward. Following in his father's footsteps, he clearly possesses the Force and is coming up in a time when Luke's rebuilding the Order. I'd love to see him become friends with a young Ben Solo, and they might even do something wild and make him a Knight of Wren. I always felt like he was based on the Legends character Jacen Solo, who himself became a Dark Jedi and was the basis for Kylo. When Disney took over, they of course changed things up, but I do think that Jacen will play into things a big way in the future. Now, the New Republic are really starting to fall apart, and you can totally see how the First Order rose up. Constantly talking about these Roman Empire-esque similarities, with the Senate also being a big part of that too. The constant bickering and squabbling caused several issues, and they aren't really ready to handle what's coming with Thrawn. All the infighting and denial has left them unprepared, and thus Thrawn can come in and really sweep the board. As we know, Leia ends up going off and doing her own thing, and in this fracture, the First Order managed to rise up. I think this will end up being the splinter that splits the New Republic apart and leads to it being weak enough that they're all able to be attacked. The New Republic actually started dismantling and pulling the fleet back after their victory above Endor, and this left giant holes in their remaining armada. I think that will be the next move, with Thrawn striking out from Dathomir, and we end with Ahsoka trying to see a silver lining because at least Ezra got home. However, they've kind of unleashed Pandora's box, and though they're not accepting it, this is a pretty big L. Still though, Sabine has finally become Ahsoka's apprentice once more, and Anakin watches as he sees his Padawan becoming a master. We end with his ghost, which is sort of like Return of the Jedi, and though he smiles, there's sort of this hint of sadness to it too. Now, Anakin returning, that also sort of brings things full circle from that first tease at the end of episode 4. All of his appearances have had a thematic element to it, with them clearly being based around training. The vision in the world between worlds was giving her a lesson about life and death, and even the hologram was training her in a certain way. They've constantly retained this master and apprentice relationship, with her not only learning from his pros, but also from his cons. Ahsoka, of course, knows the dark man he became, and in opposite to this, she clothed herself in white. He was said to be someone who'd bring balance to the Force, and we've seen lots of people who follow on from him help to fulfill that. Ahsoka has sort of become Ahsoka the White, whereas his grandson Kylo Ren became a Dark Sith Lord. Luke did his Luke thing and drank blue milk, but he trained Kylo carrying this on. Either way, Anakin now sits on a higher plane of existence, able to access the living world by harnessing the Force. There was a comic that talked about how Qui-Gon became a Force ghost, and that he said upon death he was absorbed into the cosmos. Concentrating though, he was able to regain his identity, and his memories came back after having just become an essence. Anakin still has several people pulling him back, and he likely feels guilt from how he lived his life. His entire lesson to Ahsoka was about making her remember he was once a good man, and this was so she couldn't get thrown off in a battle. Ahsoka blamed herself as she left the Jedi Order, and thus she had to be reminded so it was no longer a weakness. Now, I think Anakin may be revealed to be a Mortis god, which again, the statue with Baylan teases. In the Clone Wars, Anakin actually clashed with his son, who, as we mentioned before, this statue belongs to. I think that he may become the father, with Luke becoming the son, and Ahsoka could even end up becoming the daughter. I know he had Leia, but she didn't fully train, and from a technical point of view, it would make more sense to do it with Rosario since Carrie sadly passed away. I was also toying with the idea of Baylan becoming the son, as he seems to be tapping into something beyond the simple understandings that we have of the Force. This was by design too, and Filoni said he deliberately made Baylan's lightsaber orange so he could show he was neither Sith nor Jedi. Even some of his first words were,
We are no Jedi.
So it does make sense that they take things in a different direction. Sadly, as we know, Ray Stevenson passed away, and yet it's still kind of up in the air exactly what's going to happen to his character. Ahsoka becoming the daughter though actually makes a lot of sense, as she was resurrected by the daughter's original energies. The daughter herself sort of manifested in the Morai, who did go on to become an ally of Ahsoka. Morai of course appears on that rock as well, and I think that Filoni will carry on the daughter themes. In case you don't know, the owl became a convor of the daughter, with some saying she was a physical manifestation of her. Morai actually appeared in the world between worlds, and this is what led to Ezra pulling Ahsoka out. Also important to bear in mind here, you can see that there was a daughter statue, however, this has crumbled away, possibly leaving the position open. The father and the son didn't die either, whereas the daughter did, so the crumbled statue being here makes sense thematically. Thus I think they're lining this up together with the Mortis gods being a way to defeat Thrawn and also the Night Sisters. The idea of a trinity is of course present in a lot of religions, but it's also very present in Star Wars and can be seen through lots of mediums. The Mortis gods were a trinity, and even the Night Sisters and their temples, they've all been aligned with 3 figures as well. The star map to Peridia was opened up through creating a triquetra, which itself is too linked directly with the trinity. Lastly, we also have the ancient god figures on Zepho, which may be repeating here as we can see their text in the walls. So I think this series and what's to follow is about building around a new trinity for the saga. Now as for the future, Thrawn is back and he's ready to bring a reckoning with him. Going forward, I think we'll see a grand time between now and the sequel trilogy where we'll basically watch the Disney version of Heir to the Empire. It's long been said Ahsoka's getting a second season, but I think beyond that we'll see the Disney Plus shows all combining for this big event. I think just in general for Disney, that they need to start doing several seasons of stuff, because like, if you ever look at the Nielsen's charts or anything, just before another season of something releases, the last one will shoot up in viewership and you kind of have this knock-on effect. Marvel have sort of missed out on this outside of Loki, and yeah, you'll often see that viewing figures shoot up when a new season arrives. Anyway, when Filoni's movie was originally announced, it was said to be a Mandalorian one, but that's kind of changed recently with it now being put forth as a Thrawn trilogy. However, I think elements of the Mando stuff will still remain in place, and we'll get this Mandoverse playing a big part. You think about it, these shows actually fit together pretty well too, as Ahsoka was introduced during Mando Season 2. Bo was brought across as well, Sabine worked alongside Bo for a bit, and she's of course a Mandalorian as well, so it all ties together. Bo featured a Mando, knew Sabine, she knew Ahsoka who featured a Mando, and Thrawn was mentioned in Mando Season 2 and 3, and thus yeah, they're clearly tying them all together. He's going to become the Star Wars version of Thanos, and though originally he was tackled by Luke and the gang, I think unless they want to de-age everyone, these characters are the smartest way to handle it. Heir to the Empire actually had similar themes to what we have now, with a book trilogy taking place during a time when the Empire was leaderless. Thrawn came in and united them once more, and in his death he might create the First Order. We also have the Dark Force that's lying undiscovered, and this could open the gate for something big down the line. And the most obvious things, the Night Sisters find a way to resurrect Palpatine, which explains somehow, look, you get the bit, yeah, you get it, you don't have to keep doing the joke. Either way, Force-infused clones are something we've seen through Moff Gideon, but I think tying it towards a Night Sister magic would make more sense. As we've talked about, they can resurrect the dead, and this would explain why Palps' corpse was so withered. Infused with Dark Sister magic would make him slightly more sinister, so that could be something they end up doing down the line. However, I think that it will more likely divert fully to the Mortis gods, with Filoni's trilogy centering around them too. This could also open the door for Abeloth, who may come with them as she was part of the Ones. Known as the bringer of chaos, this could bring balance in the Force and allow the darker elements to rise up and then finally take over. Either way, that ends the episode. You know, it had its high moments. It kind of suffered from the Disney finale syndrome, I call it anyway, which is where, you know, they have to wrap things up while sort of teasing things for the future. Some things get left on the cutting room floor, it often devolves into action, but overall, I feel this was delivered well. Now, as for my thoughts on the series, I think it's had its good and bad, but overall, there was way more I liked than I didn't. The show started off extremely slow for me, and I was all about checked out after the first 2 episodes. I felt like those spent 2 hours basically taking us to the point where we got at the end of Rebels, and even the conflict, you know, we knew we'd end up with them reunited, so it just seemed like they were going through the motions purely for the sake of it. Lucasfilm, they also have this weird thing where they'll give characters happy endings and then manufacture tension so there's an excuse to make a sequel. Happened in the case with Luke and Indiana Jones, and it's just weird giving someone a send-off that you then have to go back on. It wasn't something like The Dark Knight Rises where The Dark Knight set up why the character was like that, and it seems more like they're milking stuff because they want to reuse the characters for money. Now after those first 2 episodes though, I feel like the show just took off and really got going, which is when I started to like it. I think Star Wars has kind of been stuck doing the same thing for a long time, with creators really refusing to evolve beyond what's come before. This actually seems like it's trying to open new things up and create new galaxies with new rules and tech. Beyond that though, they also played into the past elements perfectly, and I know people accuse the Anakin stuff of being cameo fan service, but I thought that it developed the characters beyond just being that. Not only did I see Ahsoka in a new light, but Anakin too, and I think Filoni really handled those characters with the respect that they deserve. Sadly though, we know this is the last time we'll see Ray Stevenson as Baylan, and there's a real sadness to seeing how good he was. Guys had nothing but love for his role, but unfortunately he never got to see it. I think it's going to be difficult to replace him, but obviously I also think it honors the character by having him keep going. Such a shame, and yeah, just adds a hint of sadness to the series because he was easily the best bit of every scene he was in. The Night Sister stuff also worked really well for me, and the casting of Ezra especially felt like it was bang on. They even had the 2 scars on his face from his battle with the Inquisitor and really paid attention to detail with it. I know there was a lot of arm folding and standing around sighing early on, but I think that it went on, the series just got better. Feel like this was a really solid starting point to build things up again, and hopefully from now on they can just hit the ground running. Either way, that's how I feel about the show, and obviously let me know your thoughts below in the comments, yo. Some people, yeah, they also drop a like on the video, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please click the join button. You get early access to videos every week, and it goes such a long way to helping us out. Now, if you want something else to watch, we've got a breakdown of Gen V on screen right now, so definitely head over there right after this. We are also going to be covering Loki every week, so make sure you stay subscribed because you don't want to miss those videos. Out of the way, huge thank you for sitting through this one. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. You take care. Peace.